Hopefully everybody can see this. If you can't, just let me know. I'll try to rectify the situation. But, okay, so leveling up your church photography. I will start by saying, I'm not going to assume that we all are photographers here. But I'm hoping that we all kind of know the basics, because I'm not going to go too much into the basics of like how to use a camera, and like the type of settings that you should be using. I will touch on it briefly, but this is basically for people who have an idea of, taking good pictures and knowing what makes a good picture and how you can just elevate that for your own church's platforms, if you're using social media for your individual churches, and if you take pictures for large events such as like a youth day, things like that, you want to share those on social media, then we're looking at how we can make a bigger impact through those images that we share at those events. So a little bit about me. I've been working with the media team for the NEC for a long, long time. And I've definitely learned a lot over the years. I've always been interested in photography. I put a little note there that I shot my first wedding at 13. My auntie allowed me to do that, and it was a very cool experience. And I'm sure not a lot of 13-year-olds get the opportunity to do that. So I've been passionate about photography from a very young age. I went to university to study media, and a lot of the expertise and experience and the knowledge that I've been able to accumulate over the years has come from my studies at university, as well as the hands-on experience I've been able to have since 2008 in the media team. I wish I could have found some of my early photos, like when I was doing events, because I've definitely come a long way. And it's always interesting to see the progress over the years of how you grow and the type of things that you like to take pictures of and how your skills develop. Yeah, so I would just encourage anybody who isn't confident in their skills at the moment to just keep going, because you get there eventually. And so today I work at the conference as a secretary, and I'm still with the media team. Um, Joe's Joe's in the group right now, and I'm hesitant to say how long I'm going to stay under his direction. But yeah, it's good.
Forever. Forever is the answer.
But yeah, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to go to lots of events throughout the year and capture all sorts. And I'll show you some of that a bit later. Okay. So in this session, I'm going to try and go through what sets apart church photography from average everyday photography. Um, what things you might want to consider adding to your equipment if you don't already have. We'll look at editing as well. And then we'll also touch on mobile photography, because it kind of ties into equipment, because not everybody has access to, your big DSLRs, and you can do so much with your phones these days, especially like the latest Samsung's iPhones. They basically are those big cameras condensed into a handheld device. So we'll look at that as well. So let's begin with the difference between, or the highlighting the differences between church photography and, let's say, wedding photography, for example. Putting aside the photographer label, we've all been given mission as Christians to be able to share the gospel. And photography is one of the ways that we can do that without words, and taking just snapshots of experiences in our church settings to share with the church and the wider community. We're focusing on capturing moments that people will be able to relive, people who were there, and also capture the attention of people who weren't there and get them interested in whatever was happening, and maybe spark their interest and make them want to join in whatever's happening and attend events in future. And those are the main people that we're trying to attract. You know, we want our pictures to be attractive, um, not in a manipulative way, but just so that people can see, you know, this is what's happening where we are. This is what we're doing for God in this little spot on the planet. And we want you to be involved. So that's one of the main focuses, the main difference between church photography and regular photography, because our focus is on spreading God's message and sharing what God is doing in the lives of the people who we interact with in those spaces. And it also helps to give people a better understanding of what an event is about without having to go and watch the live stream. Maybe it will even influence them to want to go and watch the full live stream of whatever was happening in church that day. So that's what we're trying to do with our images as church photographers. We're operating in spaces that we believe ultimately that God's presence is there. And so we want to capture that essence and be able to share that with everybody who we want to be a part of this experience and bring people to God through our storytelling, which I'll talk about a bit more later. So another thing that sets the church photography apart is the equipment that we use. It would be a bit cumbersome and time consuming to walk around with the tripod when you're trying to capture moments during your services. So you need to be able to be confident in using your camera handheld or your phone if you're using your phone, and know what kind of settings that you need to be using to reduce any camera shake. Make sure your images are not blurry, and that there's less grain in your images, and make sure that everything, you know, your shutter speed is at the right amount so you don't have any problems with editing later and you don't miss any moments. That's really important. You want to make sure that everything is in a ready to go state in when it comes to your equipment. And editing, I'll show you a few examples later, but this is a subjective thing. Each individual will like to edit differently, but what I would say is that you don't want to be overcomplicating your images. It takes a lot of time to edit, and you really just want to keep things simple, and often the simplicity helps in the effectiveness. And if you're working in a media team, typically maybe your director will say he wants the images within a week, 2 weeks maximum, because the further in the distance you turn around those photos, the less of an impact it has. You know, you want it to be fresh in the minds of the people who you're sharing it with. And it just keeps things ticking over at a very efficient rate. Okay, any questions so far? I can't see any hands or anything, so I'm going to keep going. If I'm not seeing you, just come off mute and speak. I'll stop. Okay, so I don't know if anybody gets the bit of a joke that I put, but tread softly is the hymn, and so going back to basics a bit, we need to tread softly when we're doing our church photography, because you don't want to be distracting people in their worship. We want to capture the moments with as little movement, noise as possible. I would say for the women in the chat, in the group, you don't want to be in heels, especially if you're on hardwood floors. It's going to be too loud and too distracting. If you can wear flat shoes, it's always best, unless you're walking around on carpet, and in case it doesn't matter. But you're going to be walking around anyway, so wear comfortable shoes. That goes for everybody. Um, uh, if you haven't got a camera with a silent shutter speed, and this is where phones come in great, because you don't actually hear your phone going, unless you've got it on loud. You don't hear your phone when you're taking a picture. So you need to be strategic about during the service when you take your photos. So if there's singing going on, that's a great time to take photos, because no one's going to hear your shutter. If there's prayers, this is something that is a bit tricky, because there's a lot of silent times. You want to time it so that you are not causing anybody to open their eyes and look at you in the middle of the prayer. You want to make sure that you're kind of timing it when someone is speaking, or maybe just at the end of the prayer, just before everybody starts to move and open their eyes. That's the best time to take pictures of people praying. Or if you have a silent shutter speed, then that's irrelevant. You've got a bit more flexibility as to how you can operate. If it's a small room as well, obviously everybody in the room can see you moving around. So what you want to do is make sure that you're making the most of the space that you're in before you start moving around. So get every available shot in that area, because walking around up and down, it is distracting, and we're trying to capture the room and everybody's emotions in the room, but it can get very annoying to see someone just running back and forth, trying to get the shot. So I would say maximize the area that you're in before you're moving around to another location to get another shot. That's really important, because you don't want to take away from the service just because you want to get that shot. Okay, so let's quickly talk about equipment. So the camera you use is really up to you, and that includes using your phone again, as I said. And I wouldn't recommend using a film camera unless you're taking your own personal photography, because it takes a lot of time. Well, it can take a lot of time to process the images, and assuming you're working within a team, you want the images to be turned around quite quickly. And so a film camera would not be ideal for that. And what I would say is, whatever camera you're using, it needs to have adjustable settings. You can use your cameras on auto. It means it's a little bit less, you have less flexibility as to what you can do in that space. Because, for example, if the room is dark, you might want to brighten it, but you can't in auto. It's kind of the camera assesses the situation and makes its own mind up. You can't really use your own justifications for changing settings. So I would say, if you have a camera that has adjustable settings, spend some time getting to know how each thing works. There's nothing worse than turning up to church or an event and you're kind of wasting time trying to figure out what does what. You need to be ready to go and capture each moment. And that's what I would say in terms of camera equipment. You need to have, and you can never have too many SD cards. Having SD cards on deck is going to be your best friend, because if you fill up a SD card, you can't go back and delete images that you haven't even looked through yet. You need to have another one ready to go straight away. These are the two that I recommend, just simply because they're quite fast in terms of how they process the data and write it to the cards. You're not waiting for you're not waiting to take the next image. Somebody want to say something? No? Okay. Yeah, so I would say the higher the quality of the card, the faster the and then if you can see where it says under the title Extreme or Extreme Pro, the higher that number is, the faster it will operate and the more efficient you'll be able to do your your photo taking. It just means that you can take as many pictures as you want per second and you're not having to worry about the delay. Quickly, just on lenses, most cameras do come with a lens known as a kit lens, but for greater flexibility, I would recommend getting a prime lens, which is one that doesn't zoom. I'm not trying to dumb it down too much. But you've got your prime lenses, which give you a set focal length, and then you've got your zoom lenses. And this one that I've given an example of is a telephoto lens, which is extra zoom, basically. And I'd recommend these two just because they give you the biggest variety in terms of, you depending on the room size, you want to have a lens that can get quite close to the action if you're standing at the back of the room, because that also helps to reduce your distraction making ability if you're standing at the back and you can zoom to wherever you need to get to at the front. And then with the smaller 50mm lens, it's good for getting closer to the action, but also having a really good depth of field as well from your subject. Helps to blur out the background and gives your images another layer of like dynamics. It just helps with the quality of the image. The 50mm, for example, is pretty inexpensive. So maybe your church might allow you to purchase that equipment because it's quite inexpensive for your use. With the telephoto lenses, they can be quite expensive, but this one is kind of a budget one, the 70 to 200. But these are Canon. Also, they'll have other variations for Nikon, for Pentax, or the rest of them. Like I said, it's subjective, so you use what is at your disposal, but don't be afraid to ask your church to support you in taking good quality photos. So maybe they'll invest in equipment for you to use. It's always good to ask. They can only say no, but I would always encourage you to ask your church for support, because it is something that photography is a really important component of just even capturing the church's history for the future generations, and so it is a worthwhile investment. Anybody have any questions on that? No? Okay, moving on. Okay, so storytelling. We want to be intentional about the things that we share from our services. These are a few of the images that I've taken at the larger events. This was at the Bethel Convention Center. So we want to be intentional about the things that we share and convey the emotions and the atmosphere in one frame or a couple of frames, to be able to share what happened in the room, who was there. And you might want to consider taking, these are all during the services. I should be able to show you a little bit later on a gallery of the whole day. So you can see from start to finish the kind of story that I had in my mind as I was going through the day. But you want to be able to capture all the different components of the day. And this is from a large event perspective, but in your local churches, you want to capture people coming into church, greeting each other, capturing a hug, people sharing a joke. All of that helps to share the story of the day, like what was happening at church, who was involved. It just helps to communicate that aspect of fellowship that we want people who aren't in our church to be a part of and feel like they want to be a part of. We're trying to share the love that we have amongst each other with the community outside. You can see that I've got a few different focal lengths here. And part of storytelling is, using different techniques and different shots to be able to communicate what's happening in the story. So you can see I've got the one at the bottom when the man raising his hand. That was quite a close shot because I was trying to capture his emotions. And then you've got the one just above that, enjoying the worship service. That's another tight shot, capturing the moment with them. And then you want to capture the details, the emotional moments. The one that's I don't know my left and right at the moment, but you can see the one where the man has his arm around the other gentleman, capturing those kind of emotions. That helps to share the heart of what's happening in the room. Okay, and just briefly on mobile photography, for those of you who don't have a camera, these are two pictures that I've taken on my phone, and it's just to kind of show you the capabilities. I would say that, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but especially the one where the man is speaking, even I was quite shocked at how that picture came out. It's a little bit blurry where his hands are moving, but it definitely looks high quality. And that just goes to show how far cameras on your phone have come. And it's worth exploring, if you've got an iPhone or a Samsung, they can really do some really amazing things. Especially for social media. The way that you can take the pictures on your phone and quickly upload it to your social media accounts, it just adds to the simplicity and ease of the process. So I would definitely recommend using your phone more. I'm actually trying to use my phone more, and I walk around with quite hefty cameras, but I'm trying to use my phone more because it does definitely help with the ease of transferring images as well, and then uploading them, editing them. You can also edit on your phone, and it just helps with the whole process of distribution. Is made a lot more simple by using your phone. One thing that I didn't mention, especially if we go back to this one here, with the storytelling, if you do have a communications director, or if you are a communications director, something that you should maybe do with your team or think about when you're taking pictures is what kind of story you want to tell for that day. So if you're not the communications director, you should have a conversation with your leader and basically find out from them what they want to do, what they want to capture, and bear in mind, the social media aspect. If they are going to be shared on social media, or if they're just going to be uploaded onto your church's website, you want to think about what kind of compositions you're going to capture. So maybe go through a shot list and have in mind, you're going to have a certain amount of portrait images, you're going to have a certain amount of landscape images, just so there's no, like, when you come to the end of the day and you've taken 500 pictures and none of them are worth using because you haven't met the brief. You want to make sure that you know going into the day what shots you're looking for, and anticipate the different things that go on throughout the service. So if you've got a program, it's good to keep that with you so you know what's coming up next and you can anticipate where you're going to be for that moment. You can position yourself in the right areas. So all of these are really good things to keep in mind as you're going through your day in church. So yeah, having a shot list is really, really good idea. Um, and then bearing in mind what the pictures are also going to be used for. That's also something that you should definitely keep in mind. Yeah, so that is that. Any questions on this section? And then I'll kind of take you through the gallery that we as a media team have used. So you can see examples, and then I'll talk a bit more about editing as well. So does anybody have any questions on what I've shared so far?
I went to the Camporì in Hungary last year, and they had a sharing platform for
Mm,
photos. I can't remember what the name of it was, but people could upload their pictures and everyone could see them.
yeah.
Have we got something in the well, I'm in North English Conference. Have we got something of similar program that we're using?
Yeah, so we use Flickr
Right.
at the moment. Um, and I will just go over to that. There are a variety of sharing platforms that we've used in the past, but Flickr seems to be the easiest in terms of um, having all of the pictures in one place, and it's quite easy to use, and it's a little bit like Instagram, but just for photos that like for large scale photos, so big.
So obviously, it'd be nice to involve the children. They can upload their pictures. You know,
Yeah,
people in the audience can get a better shot in some places. I know
yeah.
not every picture is going to be great, but if they can upload to somewhere, then we can use that
Mm-hmm.
content and select from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a good idea. I think one of the things that we as a conference are trying to do is have a very clean look. I do understand the appeal of wanting to have something that, you know, everybody can get involved in. And maybe that's something that we can think about for future. Um, but as a team, this is how we share our images at the moment. I'll just share this again. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can all see. This is the area day of fellowship a couple of years ago. This is our, you see in the back end of it because this I'm logged into our account, but you can
Yeah,
see this is how we kind of distribute the images. And
yeah.
I was talking about earlier about, you know, telling the story of the day. And we try to organize the pictures in a way that's from start to finish, like what happened right at the beginning, um, right to the end of the day. I just scroll
Yeah, I think I'm more talking about having like a share
a
folder
database
somewhere
for
where people
everybody.
can send, and then from that content and the content that we create, we can then use both sets of photos to do something like this.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. There isn't really anything that we currently have at the moment. We do, like, for certain events sometimes have I know for youth we have a like a QR code sometimes and put it on the screen. People can drop their photos in.
Yeah.
But as a conference, there isn't anything that we have like that at the moment, but it's definitely something we can start to implement. It just means it's more work for me to go through them. But yeah, no, it's a very good idea so that everybody feels involved in the creation, and they get to see their photos as well, which is a really good idea and gets people more involved. So yeah, definitely that's a great idea. Something that we would like to.
If you can drop us your email address at the end as well, if I
Yeah,
you can find the link to the one that they used at the camporee in Sopron, I'll link you across so you can have a look at it. I'm sure I've
sure.
got details
What
somewhere.
I'll do, I'll just put it in the chat because I know it was on the other side, but I'll just do it quickly. Okay, so yeah, just quickly go through. You can see the types of images that we like to select, you know, a lot of like wide shots. We have a variety of wide shots. That's a bit dark, but yeah, so capturing people's emotions throughout the day, different moments of worship, the people who were involved. You want to highlight the key people who were involved. Let me go back to like wide shots like this that help to show like how many people were there. This is at the beginning of the day, so then you'll get another wide shot later on seeing how many people actually showed up for the whole day. Just get as much as you can to show exactly what happened, and it just helps people to relive the moments that people have experienced that day. But that's just an example of one of the folders that we've got.
Quick
There's
question, Bethany, if I may.
yeah, go ahead.
Just looking at some of these images, it does seem like some of the auditoria are quite dark. So I'm wondering about flash. Is it something that you would say consistently never use, or something that you could use on occasion? I'm just wondering whether some of these pictures were actually taken with flash, given the lighting.
So personally, I don't use a flash for large rooms like this, which is why I would like to suggest that you use cameras that have adjustable settings so that you can make them as bright or as dark as you want them to be. But yeah, so for example, like this one here, because of where she's standing, you just make use of the light in the room. But for example, if you're in a smaller room, and it's quite dark, in those circumstances, I would say you should, I say always have a flash just in case you do need to use it. But I just find that, especially if you're not very experienced in having to change settings quite quickly, it's just something else to think about. So I would say if you aren't comfortable because there's so many times you can get overexposed and blown out images when using flash. I would say if you're just starting out, I definitely would suggest just using the settings on the camera. But in a smaller, darker room, I say have a flash just in case, because when you are using the flash, it obviously bounces around in the room, and it'll be more effective in a smaller room than it would be in a room like this size. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, obviously, if you're in a big room, you see some people taking pictures with a flash gun going off, and it's just pointless because the space is too big to
Yeah,
accommodate.
yeah, exactly. A lot of these are like I said, the turnover has to be quite quick. So some of these will be darker than others, just based on the amount of time that you have to edit. But the majority of them, if you can, you know, in editing, I'll show you a little bit later. In most cases, you can make them to the right level so they're not too dark. I'll just quickly go and show you, like, this is available on Flickr. I don't know if we have a I might be able to share an external link so you guys can have a look at the type of stuff that's already on here, just to get, you know, some inspiration if you want, examples of the things that the team has done. This is also a resource for you and your churches to use if you are creating content for your social media. So it's kind of like a stock photo bank, if you like. So these photos are available to use at your disposal. I'll try and get a link to that that you guys can access. But yeah, that's the stream. I will just quickly go into the editing side of things. I personally use Lightroom, but you know, there's so many different softwares out there now. Lightroom is a paid software, but there's lots of free ones. Like Blackmagic do one, but I use Lightroom because it is quite user-friendly, and there's a lot of especially now with the use of AI, there's it helps to streamline and make your editing processes a lot easier. Now I have to share this again. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I just chose this image as a example. So this is the raw image. Well, no, it's the basically the unedited JPEG. The raw images cannot be found, but this is the unedited JPEG, and so we're looking at basically what needs to be done to make this better. I'll first talk about composition. I showed it earlier. You want to make your photos as dynamic as possible and capture the story or the moment in one frame. So you want to be strategic about what you're actually taking a picture of. So I like to use the foreground, and I would recommend and suggest that when you're taking your pictures, you use the foreground to your advantage. You know, if you're taking pictures through like maybe around the corner, if you've got pillars in your church with the pillar just out of focus in the front, or having other people around the subject or through someone's heads or over a shoulder, those are really dynamic looking images, and it just helps to add interest. So with this one, for example, it's in the middle of a crowd and I've focused in on this one individual, but it is quite dark. And so, like I said, you don't want to spend a lot of time on editing, because if you do have a fast turnaround, like in the media team, we try and get them within a few days of the event. And especially like at CAT meeting, you have to have a good chunk of images from that day to share on Instagram or Facebook that evening. So you haven't got a lot of time to spend on editing. So it's just like my quick editing process. So usually when I've got the images in, I'll start to work in the, I hope you can see my cursor or else I'm doing this in vain, but you can just move that the way. You can work in your S-curve, this little histogram looking box here. And so I like to start here just because it helps with the finer details of the brightness and making sure the depths are there and all that kind of thing. So just quickly, immediately you can see it's gotten a lot brighter. I don't usually go that high, but just for example's sake, I am gonna assume that everybody kind of has had a hand at editing, because I'm not gonna go unless you want me to. If somebody puts their hands up and says like, can I go through all the different features of Lightroom, then I'll do that. But I'm gonna kind of whiz through this because I don't know how much time I've actually got. Maybe 15 minutes. Okay. So yeah, so I've just lightened the highs a little bit, and you want to drag the darkers down as well, so the black's a little bit dark. And that's already created quite a high contrast image. You could stop here. I wouldn't, but you could, and it would still be a good image. But then I like to kind of go into the actual light tabs here. So you can see the top of his head, and this guy back here is looking a little bit blown out. So I'll just bring down the whites a little bit, just to take away that harshness. It's still a little bit dark, so might want to raise the exposure just a little bit. And then it is also a little bit grainy. So one of the things that Lightroom has started to do, it's not compatible, but yeah, one of the things that Lightroom has got this thing is this AI function for denoise, which is really efficient in removing that grain. Before this option existed, you have this luminance button, the manual noise reduction. And so I'll just pull that up a little bit, just so it makes the image a little bit more smooth. And that's pretty much for each image. Maybe I'd change the colors a little bit. If it's looking a little bit orange, just move that down a little bit. You can change your white balance here, make it a little bit warmer. And that's pretty much how I would go through the process for each picture. Just, you want to keep things as simple as possible. Like I said, you can use presets. I have quite a few presets that I use for church photography, but like I said, it is subjective. What I would say is to keep your images as clean as possible. So you saw that I was trying to remove the grain. You don't want to put grain in and make it look all film look. That's not what we're going for when it comes to church photography. Want it to be quite simple, and like, you know, not having to search for what's happening. And it's not trying to, just want to convey the meaning of what's happening in the photo without too much embellishment, you know. Keep it as organic as possible. And that's really as much as I plan to share. If there's anybody that has any questions, I can go into other things. No, nobody has any questions. That means I think I did a good job.
I would I think we've been mentioned a few times today. How do you get along with permissions for taking pictures?
Right, okay. So as I said, if you have your communications director, or if you are the communications director, then there is a process that you will need to go through to make sure that everybody is comfortable and that you've got everybody's permission to be photographed. Or if there are people that cannot be photographed, that you make sure that you're aware. For events like this at the Bethel Convention Center, we have printouts of like disclaimer forms to say that, you know, this event is going to be a live stream, there's going to be photographers. If you don't want to be captured, then there's a designated area that they need to sit in to avoid being on camera or being photographed. And then everybody in your team needs to be aware of where that area is so that they don't even go near it, just to prevent any issues. For your
Is there a conference-wide policy for this that we can have though?
yeah, there is. And I can get that ask Joe to distribute that or have access to that. But yeah, there is a standard method of practice that we follow, and that you can use in your churches as well.
Yeah, excellent.
Anybody else?
Can I quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So I know you in your great presentation you've talked or focused primarily on events. I just want to share an experience we had at my local church where a colleague of mine took a portrait of a senior member, probably a couple of years ago, and that member passed away last year, and the family didn't actually have a great portrait to put on the funeral program, so they actually used that photo. So my big passion in church photography is not just to photograph the events, but remember that the church is the people.
Absolutely.
So every church has a generation that isn't going to be around in 10 to 20 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a generation that's going to be seniors, etc. I think it's fundamentally important, and it goes back to your slide on the difference between church and non-church.
Yeah.
Looking at us as a people,
yeah,
actually get under the skin of who we are and what we do.
100%.
So my church is a multi national congregation, so there's different cultures. All of that makes up the tapestry of who we are. I think photography is a great way of representing that, getting under the skin and showing who we are and actually what we do, not just
100%.
in terms of events, but the everyday stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I briefly mentioned it at the beginning, it is something that our churches need to really invest in because of that aspect of, the history, the people that have pioneered in the past. You look at the pictures that we've had of the churches in the past, you just got the black and white images, it's so important to keep that history. And similarly, as you were mentioning about, the individual that died and the person that had that pictures, in my local church, I've got so many pictures of the people that have passed away, and I've just got that portrait that the family can have, and it really fills you with a sense of community and being able to share in those moments with those people, and it just just strengthens the bonds between yourself and the people that you worship with. And like you said, it is something that we want to be able to take that feeling of community and the love and the fellowship and share that with people who aren't involved in that and want to bring them into it. And photography is one of the crucial ways that we can do that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? 6 minutes left.
I just want to thank you for the presentation, actually. I've taken lots of photographs for different churches over the years. I used to be into photography. I wouldn't say I was particularly good, but I understood the basics and the concepts. But yeah, it's been a really good reminder of the importance of composition, I think, and and trying to raise the quality of the image just to make it more dynamic and more interesting, etc. So yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I am, like I mentioned at the beginning, I don't know if people weren't here, but I am quite unwell. So you're getting about 30% energy from me right now. But I hope that you've been able to take away anything. If you could take anything away, I'd be grateful. But thank you so much. Yeah, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years doing church photography, and it's something that I continue to learn and develop, because there's always something new with technology. Yeah, I'm really grateful to have this opportunity. Thank you for listening. I put my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out. You'll probably see me running around in future events. Don't hesitate to stop me. I can show you what I'm doing. I'm very open to handing over my camera and getting people to get a feel of what it is that we do, as much as possible. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Any other questions? I'm open. I can show you.
I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just from observation, most of what we do in photography is built for the digital domain. It can end up on a website or social media.
Yeah.
When I was taught photography, I was taught it isn't a photograph until it's printed.
Okay, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on actually printing photographs and perhaps sharing those?
Okay, so as you mentioned, we are kind of more in a digital age now. In terms of distribution, digital's much easier and much more effective in terms of using the images for social media, for example, and promotional materials. In terms of printing for church distribution, I'd say maybe, I mean, albums are always good, but it just, you might find yourself wasting a lot of time depending on what the reasons why you're printing the images. I would say avoid it if possible, just because you are you're wanting to, well, okay, no, not avoid it. For promotional materials, for sure, like if you're having a campaign and you want to put some images on your flyer, or you're advertising an event and you want the images on that poster, then by all means print, because you want to distribute it to your local community who might not have access to the digital platforms. Then I'd say definitely do it in that case. But if you're just printing the images to share them in your church, I'd say I would only do it if you're doing it for like decorative purposes. So if you're going to print a picture to put on the wall or something to to help make the church feel more homely, in that, like, how you put pictures up in your own home, I'd say that's probably a good idea. I can't really think of any other reason why you would want to print images in this day and age. Because like I said, albums for churches, they might be useful, but how many people are going to look at an album versus, looking at a digital album online? It depends on the people, it depends on your audience, who you're sharing the images with. And I think you kind of have to discern that depending on what you're taking the pictures for, what they're of, things like that. Does that answer the question?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we're at past now, so I think I'm not sure if Joe will close the group, but if you want to go across to the main room, you're welcome to. I'll stay here for a few minutes if anybody else has any questions, but you're welcome to leave. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.